Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, we are previewing the upcoming season for the Orlando Magic. However, before I get too far into it, I would like to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all of the support that I've been receiving lately, and I hope to see that continue. In addition, I want to remind you to leave a comment suggesting which team I should do a season preview for next. Without further ado, let's talk about the Orlando Magic. However, before I think we can preview the upcoming season for the Magic, I think it might be a good idea to reflect upon and go over every transaction that this team made in the recently concluded offseason. Fortunately, with the Magic, this won't take very long because they did next to nothing. They started off their offseason by trading the 45th pick to the Milwaukee Bucks in exchange for 2 future seconds. Then in the draft itself, they took Cole Anthony, which I think was a bit of a reach. There were other players on the board like Tyrese Maxey and RJ Hampton that I much preferred to Anthony. However, he does perhaps have more upside than those two guys moving forward. I certainly wouldn't agree with that, but I could see where someone would be coming from and making that assessment. So I won't beat them up too much for that selection. They then re-signed Gary Clark to a 2-year minimum, James Ennis to a 1-year, $3 million deal, Michael Carter-Williams to a 2-year, $6 million deal, and Dwayne Bacon to a 2-year minimum with a non-guaranteed second year. Yeah, that's what they did. That's everything. Not too many big moves. I actually really did like that Michael Carter-Williams signing, though. I think that he's a really good player, a player who's really undervalued in the current NBA. And I think that getting him on a $3 million deal annually for the next 2 seasons is an absolute bargain for the Magic, and they should be very happy with getting that deal done. The other ones, though, I don't have too much to say. Basically just signing okay wing players to cheap deals. Now that we have reviewed these moves for the Magic, I think that we're ready to preview the upcoming season for the squad. As usual, we'll start with the point guard position, where they have Markelle Fultz as the incumbent starter. Fultz has taken huge strides in his development after really struggling to start off his career following being the number 1 overall pick in the 2018 NBA draft ahead of players like Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, and Bam Adebayo. So clearly the 76ers regret that, but the Magic did a great job of bringing him in for essentially Jonathan Simmons and a 2nd-round pick. So getting a guy who can be a long-term asset for your team and hopefully a building block in this eternally continuing rebuild that the Orlando Magic seem to be stuck in is clearly a great move for the team. And if Fultz can develop a jump shot, I think he has a chance to become a really solid player. I certainly wouldn't bet on that jump shot coming around, but he currently has a pretty nice game as a slasher type. I really like his floater. I think that he is a pretty efficient floater guy, and although that is a bit of an oxymoron, he does utilize it to the best of his ability. And on the defensive end, he fights and plays solid defense at the point of attack. So overall, I think that Markelle Fultz is a decent player. Is he someone that should have gone number 1 overall in the draft that he did? Absolutely not. But is he a full-on bust? I would also say no, because I think that he'll be a starting level point guard in the NBA for years to come. The other point guard on this roster is the recently drafted Cole Anthony. I'm listing Cole Anthony as a point guard here because he's really the only other player that could be considered a point guard, with the possible exception of Michael Carter-Williams, but I almost would say that point guard is MCW's 3rd position. So I'm certainly not going to list him here. I think that Cole Anthony is going to end up being more of a 2 than a 1 at the NBA level, which is certainly not good for him since he is so small in frame, and I don't think he'll be able to guard 2s, so I think that he will mostly be relegated to a bench role as a 6th man who can come off the bench, give you a scoring boost and a bit of playmaking, a similar role to someone like Lou Williams, Jordan Clarkson, Jamal Crawford have played in the past. He's not necessarily a similar player archetype to those guys, but I think that the role that he could be employed in during his NBA career could be something along that line. And with the 15th overall pick, if you're getting someone that can be a rotation player, that's a good deal. I just think I would have preferred them taking someone like Maxey or Hampton, as I mentioned earlier. But Anthony does have his appeal as a scoring guard who can score at a decent rate from all three levels of the court. I don't think that he is too much defensively, and we didn't see his athleticism translate to the college level the way that some thought that it would. I'm not a big Cole Anthony fan, but I also can't hate on the Magic too much for taking a gamble on a guy who was really considered the number one prospect in his class coming out of high school. Moving on to the wing position, we'll start with Yvan Fournier, who is a sharpshooting guy who can play both the 2 and the 3. He's pretty average defensively, not a full-on liability because of his basketball intelligence. He has a tendency to be in the right place at the right time and moves well in rotations. However, he's not a good enough athlete to force turnovers or block shots or anything like that. So overall on the defensive end, it's pretty much a wash with him. He's pretty average. On offense, he has a bit of value as someone who can knock down open shots, mostly off of catch and shoot opportunities, but also coming off of things like pin downs or double screens, and even stuff like dribble handoffs with Nikola Vucevic, who's a pretty solid passing big man. So because of that shooting versatility that Yvan Fournier brings, that makes him a starter level player in the NBA. He just doesn't have too much shot creation and ability. He's a solid playmaker, but he can't use that as much as you would like him to because he's not really able to beat his defender one-on-one very often. But overall, he's a good shooter and a player who is best off as a fourth or maybe third best scorer on a good team. Unfortunately, he's being asked to be the first or second best scorer on this Magic team, which is a large reason why they've struggled to really have any sort of playoff success in recent seasons. Terence Ross is the next player. I'd say he's kind of similar to Yvan Fournier in that he's mainly a shooter, but he does have a bit more athleticism that allows him to get to the rim at a higher level, and he's a decent finisher once he gets there. The problem with Terence Ross on the offensive end is that he makes pretty poor decisions. He doesn't always use his skills as an offensive player to the greatest of their ability, and we see him chucking up unwise shots in general. His three-point shooting took a big drop in this past season. He was a 38% shooter in the 2018-19 season. And this past year, 2019-2020, we saw that drop all of the way to 34%. So that's a pretty significant drop, and most of it is due to his role in Orlando and the fact that he really just wasn't taking great shots. I don't know that he was worth anything near the extension that the Magic gave him prior to the last year's season. During the free agency period of the summer of 2019. I think that that's a pretty drastic overpay, and they're going to regret that contract moving forward. But if Ross can reconcile some of the value that he showed in his final year with the Toronto Raptors as a solid sixth man who was scoring the ball at an efficient and high volume, that's where he has some value to the Magic as just a spark plug off the bench. And the next player is Michael Carter-Williams. Carter-Williams is perhaps the anti-Terence Ross. Those two could be viewed as essentially complete opposites. Carter-Williams does an excellent job on the defensive end of the floor. He's very versatile, can guard multiple positions, and is one of the few players that really has both the skill to block shots and to steal the ball away from the opposing team. Both of those skills allow him to be a great defensive playmaker. It allows him to create transition opportunities for his team, and he's a very good finisher in transition. On the offensive end, he's also a very good playmaker for his teammates. He has the athletic burst to get around defenders and get to the basket at a high level. He's just really not too much of a shooter, and that limits how effective of an offensive player he can be. However, because of the playmaking, because of the ability to attack closeouts and create secondary action, and because of the plus defense. I think that Carter Williams is a high-level role player. The Magic got him on a really cheap deal that I think is a fraction of what his real value is in the NBA, and I think that he can either be a very, very useful player for this team moving forward, or someone that could be an excellent trade piece going over to a contender in the near future. James Ennis is the next guy. Ennis is a pretty run-of-the-mill wing player, works hard on the defensive end of the floor, plays really hard, and is solid on that end. He's a pretty good rebounder for a wing. He shoots the ball at an okay rate, about 35%, and he also has some ability to create off the bounce. Overall, there's nothing real special here. He's pretty much just a rotation type guy. I'm not sure that he should be a starter. I think that he's more fit as a third or fourth wing on a good team, and on this Magic team, he's probably the front runner to start at the 3, which is not a good sign if you're a Magic fan. But I do think that he's capable of filling a role, and he's on a pretty cheap contract, and once again is a player that I could see them getting some future draft capital in exchange for. Chuma Okeke is maybe the most interesting player on this roster to me, perhaps the player that I think they can build around the most moving forward outside of Jonathan Isaac. You could make the debate between Okeke and Fultz. That's kind of odd to say because we haven't seen Okeke play a single game at the NBA level yet, but at the college level with Auburn, he had a fantastic NCAA tournament. He's a super high-level athlete. He finishes at the rim at a high level. He has a pretty solid three-point shot. He's a decent playmaker from the wing position. He's a plus rebounder as a wing, and on the defensive end, he's pretty good at creating opportunities for his team with steals and blocks. All of those combinations come together and make a guy who sounds like a really solid option at the wing position, and that is what gets me really excited about Chuma Okeke. I think that if he can come in and fulfill that potential, then he's a certain long-term keeper for this Magic team, and I'm excited to see what he looks like following his unfortunate ACL tear last season. The next player to talk about here is Gary Clark, who can play both the 2, the 3, and the 4 a little bit. He's a pretty good defender, plays very hard on that end of the floor, does a good job in rotations, and he's pretty decent on the ball as well. He has one of the ugliest shots in the entire NBA. His form is one of the wonkiest I've seen, but it seems to go in all the time against the Bucks. It certainly did in the playoff series, which has me a bit salty as a Bucks fan. But throughout his career, he shot it at around a 35% rate, so that in addition to his plus defense, certainly should keep him around in the NBA as another third or fourth wing type. Once again, is probably overcast in a role where he's a starter, and that may be the position he's put into on this Magic team that is really lacking in good options at the wing position. However, I do think that he's a solid rotation piece, and getting him on a multi-year minimum contract for the Magic was a piece of good business. Alfa Aminu is the next guy, another player that I think they overpaid to be a role player on a multi-year deal. Aminu struggled with injuries last season, and even when he is healthy, it's hard to see where his true value is because he struggles on the offensive end of the floor. He's terrific defensively, does a great job on the ball, is one of the better on-the-ball big wing defenders in the entirety of the NBA. Also does a solid job off the ball, is a pretty good rim protector for a forward, and is also pretty versatile, can guard multiple positions. On offense, when his shot is clicking, he's a plus player and someone that I'm okay with starting on a good team. When the shot isn't falling, he's borderline unplayable. So that's really the big factor with him, and we'll have to see what his shot looks like following his injury-beriddled 2019-20 season. The next guy here and the last player at the wing position is Dwayne Bacon. I was really high on Bacon coming out of Florida State. I thought that he had a chance to be a really high-level wing player and a real flyer in the draft that I liked when the Charlotte Hornets took him. I thought that after he started to show success at the NBA level during the 2017-18 season with the Magic, or with the Hornets, I thought that he was really going to click and become a good wing player. But this past season, he really took a step backwards. His decision making got worse, and we saw him turn the ball over at a high level. His shooting wasn't working. He was shooting it around 30% from three. At the G League level, I read that he dominated and averaged 30 plus points per 36 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. But really, it has to translate to the NBA. And because of those decision making lacking and the shooting problems, I'm not sure that he's a rotation guy at this moment. If he can improve on those two pieces, though, his ability as a high-level defender can get him places in the NBA, and I think that this is a pretty solid flyer for the Magic to take on a multiple-year deal, and the second year is non-guaranteed, so if he really struggles this season, worst-case scenario, they waive him and have no dead money on their cap for next season. Now we'll move on to the big man position, where we'll start with Nikola Vucevic. Vucevic is one of the more underrated players in the NBA, in my opinion. I think he was very deserving of making the All-Star team in the 2018-19 season, where he was named to an All-Star berth. I think he's one of the more skilled offensive big men in the NBA, is a pretty good playmaker from the big man position, can shoot the ball at a high level, is lethal in pick and pops, as we saw in the series against the Bucks. Is also pretty good in the post and can score at a high level there. Where I think he's underrated is on the defensive end of the floor. People treat him like he's a liability, and I really think that he's actually quite passable at the center position. He's a decent rim protector, not a good shot blocker, but a good rim protector. Those two things don't have to coexist. Players don't have to block shots to be good at protecting the rim. And that is exactly what Nikola Vucevic is on the defensive end of the floor. I wouldn't argue that he is a versatile defender. He is pretty much limited to playing in a drop coverage scheme. However, he does that at a pretty solid level, and for that reason, I think Nikola Vucevic is clearly a top 10 center in the NBA, and maybe even a bit better than that. I think you could make a case that he's in that second group, not up there with guys like Jokic, Embiid, Towns, Gobert, Adebayo, but I'd probably make an argument that he's right behind those guys in a group with Brook Lopez, Jusuf Nurkic, Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner. I think that he's right there with those guys as like a top 6 to 8-ish center in the NBA. The next guy here is Aaron Gordon, someone that I really think the Magic need to move on from. I don't get it with Aaron Gordon, honestly. I think that if any team had him, I'd be saying that he should be traded, because I just don't see where his value is on the offensive end of the floor. My comparison for Aaron Gordon on offense is Ben Simmons, just not nearly the same level of playmaker. He's a terrific athlete, and he finishes at a high level around the rim. He just really can't do much outside of that. Really doesn't even have a good mid-range jumper. Only shot around 35% from the mid-range, which is an absolutely atrocious number. I'm not really comfortable with him taking any shots outside of the restricted area, which is a real problem for a player who is being asked to, at times, be a floor spacer. I think that the Magic were, for the most part, better with him off the court last season, and I just don't understand what his fit is in the NBA. People say that it's in a Draymond Green role, but the problem with that is that Draymond Green is a really good playmaker. I don't think that Aaron Gordon has that same playmaking ability. And really, for him, what I see him as is a guy who stands in the dunker spot and finishes lobs or takes dump-off passes and finishes. I don't think he has much offensive value outside of that. And his impact on defense has been a bit overrated. I don't think that he's that big of a influencer on the defensive end of the floor. I think his defensive blocks plus minus was 0.7, which is good. It's above average, but it's not like it makes up for his lack of offensive production. So overall, I just don't get it with Aaron Gordon. If I were another NBA team, I would not be willing to part with a first-round pick or a good young player in exchange for him, and I just really don't get it with Aaron Gordon. He's a player that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what position he's best playing. I don't know what his role is offensively. He's a mystery to me. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I just don't get it with Aaron Gordon. Mo Bamba, the next player here, I'll give you a bit of positivity, Magic fans. I actually still like Mo Bamba, and I'm holding on to some hope that he can become an above-average starting center in the NBA. I think that developing under Nikola Vucevic is going to be really good for him in the long run. He's going to develop those skills offensively and become a good post player. He started to shoot the ball at a high level, got his three-point shot up to 34.6% from the three-point line in this past season. I buy that jump shot, and I think that if he can continue to develop that, then there's a chance that Bamba can become a really solid 3-and-D big man, as he's already a really good rim protector on the defensive end of the floor. I've heard that he's adding muscle and getting stronger, so that will allow him to be more of a threat inside on the offensive end of the floor and on the defensive end of the floor, so he can bang around with other big guys inside there. I still think that Mo Bamba, it has a chance to be a high-level, above-average starter in the NBA at the center position, and he's someone that makes sense to me as a contingency fit plan for once Nikola Vucevic starts to age. I think that this also, little conspiracy and I'm not even going to say it. It's dumb. Okay, fine, I'll say it. The Magic know that Mo Bamba has all-star potential, but they already have an all-star level big man in Nikola Vucevic. So what they're trying to do here is they're trying to hide Mo Bamba so that he doesn't get a high offer sheet in restricted free agency, and they can keep him around on a bargain deal. Now, that might be the dumbest thing I've ever said on this YouTube channel, and there's probably a pretty low chance that it is, actually, because I've said some dumb stuff before. I said the Nuggets were going to beat the Lakers in 6 games in the Western Conference Finals, so don't listen to anything I say. But, yeah, I still like Mo Bamba, and I think he has a chance to be a good starting center in the NBA. The last big man to talk about here is Khem Burch. Burch is a good rim protector and a good rebounder from the center position who has little to no offensive value. However, because of the rim protection and rebounding, he has a place as a backup center in the NBA as a role player. However, I don't think that he is a better player than Mo Bamba at this moment, and I certainly don't think he has more long-term potential than Bamba. So I think that he could be a guy that they could move on from to a team that is in need of some more big men and might be willing to part ways with a juicy second-round pick, perhaps. So, yeah, that is kind of my thoughts on the Orlando Magic. Overall, I think that this is a team in a really weird spot. If Jonathan Isaac were around for this year, I would have them as a pretty surefire team to at the very least make the play-in tournament. But with Isaac's absence, I think that they're really going to be relying on Nikola Vucevic and Evan Fournier on the offensive end of the floor to carry this team to wins. I'm not sure those two players are capable of taking on those heavy roles. And for that reason, I think that there's a chance we could see the Magic not even make the play-in tournament for this upcoming season. Overall, if I were to forecast the season for this team, I think that they have a pretty wide range of win total probabilities, considering the chance that they could move on from someone like Vucevic or someone like Fournier. So I think that a worst-case scenario in an 82-game season would be that they would win something like 28 games and go 28-54, but in a best-case scenario, I think they could finish around 500 at 41-41. This is one of the harder teams to predict for me, but if in this upcoming 72-game season, if I were to make a win total prediction for the Orlando Magic, it would probably be somewhere in the 25 to 35 win range. So I guess 25-47 at worst and 35-37 at best. Somewhere in there would make a lot of sense to me. Let me know in the comments section what you think the Magic's record will be for this upcoming season. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with in my analysis of these players. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I think that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.